State of the franchise is back, and the San Francisco 49ers gave us a W against the Jags. Much needed one, Jason, by the way, as you already know. It'd been over a month since we had a dub to talk about on the state of the franchise, and we are going to break it all down right now. And of course, look forward to Baker Watch as Tampa Bay comes to town. San Francisco 49ers got a home game this week, but we're going to break it all down right now. Drop your spicy sourdoughs in the chat. Let's get after it. Smash that like button. We ready. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. Jason Aponte. It's Wednesday, right in the middle of the week, so we've had plenty of time to digest, watch tape, rewatch tape, and get after it. What's your feeling after getting the dub against the Jags? After a long time since we've seen the 49ers get a dub.
Insanely heroic performance from Steve Wilkes. Brave to come out of the booth and just get on the sidelines. Who knew? That's all it took. Who knew? It was literally all Steve Wilkes. Has nothing to do with the players on the field. No, I just wanted to start there because after reflecting, right, like it felt like I needed to retract some things that I said, because I said, hey, I don't really think that that's really going to change anything. It's about the adjustments. Well, the adjustments were there, but the emotional connection with the players you could see, right? And
Absolutely.
Hargrave has the sack celebration. Wilkes is like, like celebrating with him. Maybe not to the degree of Saleh and Ryan's. There's moments
But
where
he
Fred
was
Warner,
vibing with the boys in his own
yeah,
way.
right, like Fred Warner and Charvarius are over there talking to him, talking about what they're seeing and giving their input. And then I think I know this is gonna sound corny, but the biggest moment was after Ambry Thomas's fumble. Ambry Thomas mouthed the words to Steve Wilkes, "I'll never forget you," and like gave him like this big embrace, and it was like this moment. And I think what that shows you is Steve Wilkes was either the person like pushing him to play or pushing for him to play or
Yeah.
helping him improve. But Ambry literally ran over to him, and there was this moment where like they had like this heartfelt moment. So, you know what, man? I take it almost all back. Steve Wilkes being on the sidelines is a good thing. The players connected with him, and for 1 week, the agenda thrives. And you know how everybody loves a good agenda, but
Oh, yeah.
like looking back on it, I think it definitely was a good thing. And again, Kyle Shanahan said the team came out pissed. There was adjustments, right? Like Chase Young and Bosa being over the A gap. Oh baby, I don't know what you're gonna do with that. You didn't prepare for that at all. And then the secondary is covering much better. A lot of things. A lot of things are great. But let's go, Gammon. Yeah,
A
I
lot of
didn't think
things are
anybody
great.
noticed.
8K on the channel?
8K on the channel, just past
Let's
8,000
go.
subs. Appreciate you guys, man, so much. It really means a lot. Like, you don't compare yourself to other channels. You just take your victories as they come, man. So, comparison is the theft of joy. So I'm really happy, man. Thank you, guys.
Congrats, man. That's awesome. One of the OG podcasters, man. Let's not forget it. Let's not forget who helped start this trend out here, 49ers content creators. OG Aponte hitting AK. That's awesome.
And that's
Of
not
course,
because I'm almost 40. Like, that's not what he means by that, actually.
make sure you go smash that sub button on Aponte's channel. Keep getting those numbers up. Road to 10K is next. But well said on the Steve Wilkes. And I think that's a great spot to kind of start, because we spoke about it last week on State of the Franchise, and we talked about it. We're like, well, how much does this move really make? We both agreed that the communication was going to be the biggest thing. And maybe that was the biggest thing. Maybe that was the biggest issue that they were going through, of real-time adjustments, guys being able to look each other in the eye and kind of vibe and, the feel of the game, right? And, when we've talked about it, Robert Saleh, D'Amico Ryans, comparison is the biggest theft of joy, and we're constantly looking back at our old DCs, and we see the new one. He's in the booth. We're like, this just doesn't feel right. Well, maybe it didn't feel right for the players either, and maybe that was a big thing. And obviously, being able to feel the good stuff of seeing the interactions and the personal aspect of it, you also got to take a look at the scheme aspect of it, man. You mentioned the double A gap mug by Bosa and Young. That was phenomenal. There was probably like, 8 to 10 times the 49ers had 6 to 7 on the line of scrimmage. They're overloading one side, they're dropping guys out.
Brad,
Sometimes they're just
real quick.
showing it.
They
Heck,
opened the game with 5 down linemen the first 2
yeah,
plays. A 5 down lineman,
yeah.
1 linebacker, and the biggest adjustment is Ambry Thomas is on the field. But keep going. Yeah, like there was so many adjustments.
There were so many adjustments, and it was one of the first times this year on tape where I saw the defense actually confusing the offense. Like where they're like, I think they did it really well against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then it kind of they got vanilla after that, and then we've questioned it. We're like, well, why are they doing this in this scenario, and et cetera. And this was like one of the first times where it's like, oh, these guys are actually gaming up the offensive line. They were getting Bosa schemed up on completely unblocked rushes. He got the PBU on one unblocked one where they had it overloaded and they dropped guys out. I was like, oh, where's this defense been? So obviously, yeah, a ton was made about Steve Wilkes going from the booth to the sideline. We do think that had an impact as well, but man, they made some adjustments, and the defense. I was saying the defensive line was the MVP of the game, but man, Javon Hargrave went insane. Nick
Oh
Bosa,
yeah.
addition of Chase Young, it was great, man. The
Oh yeah.
whole D line was making plays. It was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, and again, it's kind of the chicken and the egg argument. And I think when someone wants to pinpoint what exactly was the one adjustment, I don't think it was one. Sometimes the pass rush
Made
cleaned up for
multiple.
the right. Sometimes the pass rush cleaned up for the secondary. Sometimes the secondary helped the pass rush get there. And that's always what it's been. It's always been married one to the other. One hand washes the other, both hands wash the face, like that type of thing. Like, and that's the thing. It's like it's not like, oh well, everybody can point to, hey, they just ran a bunch of press man or they ran a bunch of cover 3. No, it was a little bit of both. Like you mix it up on the defensive line, you mix it up in the secondary at different times, and that's what you get. Like, and again, there was a whole bye week for them to go through all of these things to implement Chase Young. Chase Young, by the way, played a small complement of snaps, and I would expect that to rise. But there was a lot of talk about Javon Hargrave going into this game about return on investment on the signing, right? And then he's injured right before this game starts, right? And they didn't know if he was going to play. Well, we can shut that down for a week, right? We can shut that down for a week
I
with
thought
almost
that
anybody.
talk. I don't know where that came from, to be
Uh-huh.
perfectly honest, because I thought he's definitely shown an impact. Like
Mhm.
obviously, same thing with Nick Bosa too. Like he's had an impact off the edge. He just hasn't gotten home and gotten the sacks and
That's
gotten
what
the
it is,
5 big
Brad.
plays,
That's
right?
what it
Like
was.
we're not seeing the actual execution that we want of the outcome. Doesn't mean they're not finding success. It's just there was multiple different things. They're playing soft coverage on the back end. Coverage wasn't holding up, so rush couldn't get home. One guy was playing out of their gap assignment or whatever, getting blown off the ball, and that affected the entire defensive line. It felt like we saw this defensive line and the coverage like linked for the one of the first times. And I'm not going to sit here and say the coverage was perfect, not going to sit here and say the front was perfect, but
Christian Kirk would agree.
Christian Kirk is had a couple where he could have had some big plays, but
He's pretty good.
Trevor
He's pretty good.
Trevor went
Maybe
Trevor went to the other side.
maybe
Uh,
they know something about Christian Kirk, right? Because we scoffed at that contract, but he's been very good for them.
I'm a Christian Kirk truther.
Oh,
I told my story about how I traded Jalen Hurd, prime Jalen Hurd, for Christian Kirk
how
in my,
dare you?
in
How
my
dare you
home league
trade?
dynasty.
How dare you trade preseason
And
legend
that
Jalen
trade
Hurd?
has paid off immensely.
Trades that have aged beautifully.
Yes, not all of them age beautifully, that's for sure, but that one did. So yeah, Christian Kirk. I mean, he got me like 14 points last week. But anyways, he had more opportunities. There was definitely more for him to be had, and so the 49ers aren't perfect, but boy, was that a welcome sign to see from a scheme standpoint, vibes, just overall execution, and 49ers flying to the football, man. Like it was great to see. Felt like the 49ers defense we've come to know and love over the last couple years.
For sure. And, one last thing to clean up, just the missed tackles. But if you're looking for the positive, the 7 missed tackles is a decrease from the last few games in terms of missed tackles. So it's going down. But again, there was so many things to point to, right? You talk about the pass rush cleaning up for the secondary allowing the pass rush to get there, but not breaking in the red zone, right? Like the Ambry Thomas strip fumble. You can see how the defense and the team like came alive at that, right? Like I think again, like this may be me reading too far into it, but this team is so closely knit that they love each other and they fight for each other and they love that, right? Because I think a lot of people have been hard, including myself, on Ambry Thomas, right? And I think a lot of people on this team know that, and they pull for each other so hard that they pull for each other so hard that they couldn't even contain themselves to stay on the field because Ambry Thomas ran back the touchdown. Right, like that's they literally cost Ambry Thomas a touchdown because they were so excited
It's
because of
Kyle's
the play that
fault
he
at
made.
the end of the day, though.
It's
I'm putting that
Kyle,
one on
it's
Kyle.
Tig. I remember I watched it again. It's
It's on
Kyle, it's
Kyle,
Tig,
man.
it's all these guys getting off the field because they're so happy that Ambry
I'm gonna
Thomas did
let
it.
the rookies slide. Kyle, come
Yeah,
on, man. Where's
yeah,
the accountability? We're
right.
gonna come
Where's
after blocking his touchdown. I'm
do we
coming
need
after
to
you, Kyle.
do we need to hire a guy like Sean McVay has to keep Kyle on
Get
the
back.
sideline?
The get
Get it
back coach.
together. Kyle was so emotional in this game. Like George Kittle catches that pass and he's just like pumping a fist, not even looking, turning his back. Settle in, Kyle. Get it together, man. Like calm down, man. Be the calming influence, dude.
Oh,
No,
dude.
but I think
That was a coaching version of a Steph Curry from the
Steph
logo
Curry 3.
3.
I called
Right as
I
it
called
leave
the
your
right
hands,
play.
turn back around, walk down the sideline, splash.
I called the
That's
right play,
basically
got the matchup,
yeah,
the throw was perfect, touchdown. That is
yeah.
literally like Steph from like the logo. Like literally just like stepping back and not looking. But no, again, this is a close knit bunch, and I think that is again perhaps because the vibes are so immaculate. This is me reading too far into it because there's not too much to be upset about in this game at all. But I did think that was kind of my takeaway from that play. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, they're undisciplined. They just pull for each other so much, man. But yeah, Hargrave, best game of the season. Nick
Oh,
Bosa, good to see you, pal. You and the bromance is thriving between
yeah, dude.
Nick Young. Yeah, we should just call him Nick Young now. We should just call him Nick Young now at this point. Nick Bosa and Chase Young.
Yeah.
And even Eric Armstead gets into the act, man. And it's only going to get better as these guys implement more and get more snaps. So a great start. And this is exactly what the doctor ordered for a team coming off the bye.
Yeah, 100%. I would say Hargrave was responsible for 3 sacks, but he only tallied 1. He was also responsible for Fred Warner's interception as well, and he was a factor in the run game. Hargrave was balling. Eric had some cleanup sacks. Farrell had a cleanup sack, I think, based on Hargrave's pressure. But yeah, man, it was really good to see. It was even better, I would say, on film, watching the front seven get after it. Now we talked about it. There's plenty of room to improve. There's no perfect games, but I do think that the defense did what we needed them to do. Right, like that was really the biggest thing. Obviously, Brock Purdy and the interceptions had a life of its own over the last couple weeks, but where I think you and I identified was the defense. The defense getting back to the defense that we know they can be. And I think that was the hardest part of it. It's like they still got the same guys, a lot of the same coaches. Like we know how good this defense can be. Where'd they go? And it feels like they got their juice back. The Monstars, were able to get the energy back from them, and it felt like they were back to just dominating. Fred was flying everywhere. It was great performance by the defense.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've been at with this whole losing streak about kind of being optimistic. It's more about don't penalize yourself. Don't turn the football over. Don't miss tackles as much, right? Like it's funny how things that are completely correctable can get corrected, and then you could look like this. Now, look, that doesn't mean the 49ers are going to win every game by 30 plus points,
Wait, wait, wait,
but
wait, wait, wait. Correctable things can be corrected?
Uh, insane, right? I mean, if the 49ers were getting blown out by teams, like just destroyed, like if they went into Minnesota and Minnesota just dog walked them, right? And it was just
Yeah.
like they can't stop them. The 49ers can't do anything on offense. It was literally the 49ers moving the ball on offense, killing themselves with penalties or turning the ball over. Cleveland, same idea, right? Unforced errors, missed field goals, all that stuff. It's funny how when the 49ers just execute, you can be a team that wins games. And I know that that's simplistic, but it really that's what it boiled down to during this 3-game stretch where everyone was saying the sky was falling. The sky wasn't falling because the team was just getting flat out beat. It was
They're
because they were
beating
beating
themselves.
themselves. Yeah, exactly. So all that stuff can get fixed. And when you have a game, even when you have 7 missed tackles, whatever it was, I think it was like 7 penalties, they're inconsequential because all the other little things you've been doing have been better, right? And you're executing in a way where you're not turning the ball over in the red zone. Brock Purdy's playing some of his best football, right? Like you get everybody involved, all this stuff, and you get reinforcements. All of these things were right there for people to view. It's your point of view. Like, did you believe that that was going to be a trend that the 49ers just forgot how to play football? Or is this something that we kind of have seen with the 49ers year after year? There's always like this 2-3 game stretch under Kyle Shanahan where we're like, what is going on with this team and why are they just like
Yeah.
self-destructing? And it seems like the 49ers, at least for 1 week, are putting themselves in a position to, be great down the stretch.
Yeah. And so definitely a hugely optimistic win for all the pessimism that was built up over that month. Hey, and Kyle Shanahan spoke to it, right? He's like, man, doesn't matter what building you're in. If you lose 3 games in a row, all
Oh
hell
yeah.
is breaking loose
Hmm.
because, like, and again, you quantify it like the 49ers went a month without winning. That's weird because the last time they had actually lost a regular season game, right, dated all the way back to last season. So when it came to regular season games, they're just not used to it. And even if you want to reference the Philly game, they know there's a giant asterisk next to it because they didn't have a quarterback. But we don't need to get into any of that. But the point being is, man, you don't win games for a couple weeks in a row. They're looking around like you watch. The beauty of today's media, Jason, is we get weekly player podcasts, which didn't exist as long as as soon as 2 years ago. That didn't happen. And so we get to hear from Fred Warner every week. We get to hear from Eric Armstead every week, George Kittle on their podcast, kind of talk about the current state of the team.
Micah Parsons
And
says the 49ers are scary, Brad Graham.
Micah Parsons, man,
Gamesmanship.
ever since you put me on, I'm like, man, this guy's just
I know exactly what you're doing, Micah Parsons, and it's
yeah.
not funny and it's not clever.
Because he played the tough guy role the first time the 49ers played him in the divisional round. Bullies get bullied. I'm from Harrisburg, and it backfired. And ever since then, he's playing he's, Mr. Nice Guy.
You don't fool me.
Nope. And so it's fine. We'll let him wax poetic on the San Francisco 49ers if he wants, but we ain't buying what he's selling. But the point being is, like, you could hear guys like Fred Warner's leader of the team looking around like, man, like, we know we're capable, we know we're good, we know we have the pieces. We don't have to look outside. We just have to look inward, and we got to fix it. And so the defense did that. They stood up. Everyone was under fire. Everyone was getting scrutinized by the fan base, by outside the fan base. It was like, what's wrong with the 49ers? And they really did a good job of getting everything back on track.
And the other thing, Brad, is we talk week to week in this league, right? Like week to week, things can change.
Yeah.
Right after this game, what's the narrative? Niners are back. That's it. And it's just all it takes is one of these wins, right, to
That's it.
completely flip the narrative. And that's why 3 games is a trend. That's definitely a trend, right? Like
For sure. Well, yeah. That's
once
why
is
the
an ab
concern for me was coming in. I was like, all right,
right.
this is interesting what we got going.
Once is an aberration, twice is a coincidence, 3 times is a trend, right? So it's 3 straight games where it looks like that. But there was reasons for it, right? Like you can contextualize it. But then all it takes is one of these wins, and now everybody's like, well, Look at Philly's schedule. Philly has Kansas City, and they've got Buffalo. Who knows what Buffalo team is going to show up?
Right.
They've got the Niners, Seattle, and Dallas. So there's games for them to lose. So what about the number 1 seed, right? Like, it's so quick for things to change, and all it takes is one of these performances again. Again, this team is not the team that wins by 30, and they're not the team that loses those type of games. They're somewhere in the middle, but when you put it all together in that way, like you saw on Sunday, that can be a result. It's in the range of outcomes. So again, perfect timing for one of these. Like the game was over when George Kittle makes that catch right at halftime. That felt like the Steelers game, where it was like, okay, the game's
It
still a
did.
little close, and then boom, touchdown, game over. Like, that's it. Like, I went on complete cruise control watching the rest of the game. It just felt like that was like the last blow. So when the 49ers have a chance to knock you out, and they do early on like that, they have a chance to snowball you, like avalanche, like complete avalanche you. Like, that is absolutely one of the ways that those games can go. But as a team, as an opponent, you can't let that happen.
Yeah, we like when the 49ers start out hot, score on opening drives, and really put the pressure on the opposing team, because it feels like the defense feeds off that.
Yep.
And again, one of the main things that I called for was getting back to complementary football. That was it, man. Offense helping defense, defense helping offense, and away they go. I mean, and like we've talked about, it's predominantly positive. I mean, there really isn't a ton of negatives to take away from the game. And of course, you don't want to focus on negatives after a win and all those types of things. But,
Not a win like
Galen
that.
Brown's kind of shepherding us into kind of how Lenore struggled, had 3 of 7 missed tackles. He wants Womack to step up. Womack is still officially on injured reserve. Maybe if you guys didn't know, Nick Zakel officially on IR with a torn biceps right before we hopped on here. That opens up a 53-man roster spot. Maybe I just seeing Womack's name made that click. Maybe they bring Womack into that active role, because I think part of the reason why we don't see Darrell Luter, Beal, or Womack right now is just they don't want to cut anyone on the 53. But now you have an opening. Do you think they bring Womack potentially up into that role? Who do you kind of see the 49ers? How do you see them filling that roster spot?
Well, that would absolutely make sense, because he's the one with the experience, right? With Beal and Luter, it feels like those guys, if they had their way, they could redshirt them and get them ready for next season, right?
Yes.
I do think that they view Darrell Luter as their outside corner of the future. And the 49ers are like notorious for this, like knowing one guy's about to leave. We have someone who we think can step in the spot. So I think it absolutely would be Womack. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the adjustments with Steve Wilks. The biggest adjustment was they didn't want Isaiah Oliver on the field at all costs.
Yeah, he didn't play at all.
At all.
Play
3 snaps.
snaps?
Three snaps on mop-up duty.
Okay. So when they pulled
So
starters.
out of the bye week, we talked about adjustments. They were like, we do not want to see Isaiah Oliver in the slot anymore. And that's why you see Demo there. And that's why you see it was a shock. You come out the first 2 plays, 5 down linemen, only Fred Warner. And then I see number 20 outside. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, where did this come from? Like, this young man couldn't get on the field. But that should go to show you what they feel about Isaiah Oliver. That I know Kyle tried to clean it up in the press conference and say, well, we'll go week to week, and we'll figure out what the personnel group's going to be. And no. You guys had a whole week where you evaluated the defense and you figured all that stuff out. You didn't want to see Isaiah Oliver on this field. You didn't want 26 on the field at all. So you thought the best idea was to bring Ambry Thomas on and put Lenore in the slot, which was always the idea when the 49ers were looking for a cornerback in the trade market, right? Like, that was the idea. The whole idea was that. Yeah. Right. The whole idea was let's kick Lenore inside. Let's have another outside corner. That was the whole idea. Well, the 49ers took their entire bye week, reevaluated their defense, and said 26 can't be on the field anymore. We're going to kick Lenore inside. We're going to put Ambry outside. So while Lenore had 3 of the 7 missed tackles, also allowed 7 catches on 7 attempts. By the way, Christian Kirk is really good. I just want to make sure we say that one more time. He had himself a hell of a game. Ambry Thomas
could have been better, actually.
No, it could have been. Ambry Thomas didn't allow a thing, basically. I think he allowed 1 catch for 7 yards, if I'm not mistaken. That was actually attributed to him, according to PFF. That deep pass to Ridley. Yeah, or Ridley or Kirk, that wasn't on him apparently. That like PFF didn't give him that one. Yeah, I know. Also, by the way,
Well, on
that
tape, it's on him.
and that's what I thought too. I was like, wait a minute, like how? Like that was a long throw. By the
We
way,
did the film breakdown earlier today. I watched that one. Yeah, that was definitely on Ambry. He was
and
really close in coverage.
right.
Like
And it
he
looked
was
and
close.
remember they had to review the play to make sure he caught it. But that's just again like how funny like PFF is. And then to double down on that, the throw for the touchdown to Brandon Ayuk that Kyle called one of Brock's worst decisions, that wasn't even deemed a turnover worthy play. So it's just weird like how PFF has their way of doing it. But regardless, right? The
Yes.
the point is they went through that whole week and they said we don't want to see Oliver on this field anymore. We are going to just kick Lenore inside and we're going to take our chances with Ambry Thomas. I think that's why you saw Ambry react the way that he did to Steve Wilks, because there has to be either Wilks coaching him up or Wilks pushing for him to play, and he rewarded him with that strip sack, that strip fumble, and that's where you saw that emotion kind of come from, because it did kind of feel like Ambry was behind, everybody, and nobody wanted to see him on the field, and everybody just said, "Oh my God, 20's on the field." So it
I
was a
never
little bit
thought
of
we
a
would see Ambry on the
me
field
neither.
again unless of an injury.
Without injury, yeah, without injury. So it's good.
I was just gonna say, like we've seen training camp the last, couple years. It's been rough for
It has
Ambry.
been rough,
It's been like, I was really trying to be patient with him as a rookie, just because I'm always going to be patient with rookies because you never know how they're going to develop.
especially corners.
Some rookies can come out looking real bad, and as long as the second they start getting comfortable and they start growing into the position more, you're like, okay, this is the player that we thought we could get. So that's why you just always got to be patient with rookies. But what are we, year 3, year 4 with Ambry?
Year 3.
Year 3. And that's about as much rope as you can get as a young developing rookie who's a third rounder, right? So but good for him, man. Like, and you have to know that is Steve Wilks' call. He's the defensive backs coach, so it's up to him. Obviously, he could have input from Shanahan. He could have input from other coaches as well. But it's ultimately his call, right?
I think Kyle runs the personnel, but I think it was Steve Wilks that was actually asking for Ambry. Like, listen, this is the adjustment. I think they had to come to an agreement. Like, they had to like work on it in the bye week and say, listen, I think it's best for this to happen, and they both had to agree on that.
Yeah. So talk about like confidence with Ambry, like getting that big play, getting that big. That was like the real, like you've talked about the other nails in the coffin earlier. Like that was the official last one where it's like they're dead. Like they can't score here and they turn the ball over. They're done. Like this game there's no way they're coming back. So what kind of confidence do you think can be built from Ambry from a play like that? And you talked about the reaction on the sideline too.
Defensive backs have such a thankless job. I think it's one of those positions where everybody is just like, "Oh my God, he's getting beat," and they don't realize how hard it is to be a defensive back, to be able to anticipate routes, to face world class athletes and try to beat them, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've kind of lost sight of that with Ambry as well too. I think only because little simple things fundamentally are missing, like at times with him, where he loses himself and he's not in the right position, or he's in the right position, can't make a play on the ball. It's just little stuff like that. Defensive backs are thankless. But in the same time where we talk about one or two plays can tank someone's confidence, defensive back is all about confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And what if that play springboards him? What if this performance springboards him? Another thing is we went a whole half a season basically with Ambry Thomas starting under D'Amico Ryans during the stretch run. And D'Amico did the best he could to not put him in harm's way, to either shade someone his way or give him enough cushion to, rally to the ball. I don't think that the Steve Wilks is going to have anything different than that. I think that again, you're going to find a way to put people in advantageous situations. And how much does one performance springboard someone from the depths, right? And it's so hard to pull yourself out of losing confidence or playing without your confidence, that something like that and that emotion that you kind of saw, optimistically looking, it could be the game that we point to where Ambry Thomas goes on a little streak and starts to play well. And then you think about where the 49ers fans were on trading for a cornerback, it doesn't happen. What if your trade deadline move was unlocking Ambry Thomas and he's on your roster and you didn't have to give anything up for him? What if, right? I'm not saying that I predict that, but this is in the range of outcomes now that he's got a good performance under his belt. He's starting to feel good. The defense is playing better. If the pass rush can save him a little bit more at times, then
Mhm.
it can all start to click. And every time that everybody looks at the trade deadline, when you don't bring someone in, it's always, well, why didn't they try? We don't know if the 49ers didn't try. It sounds like they checked in on a bunch of people. But what if
Surveying.
the what if you look at this and you say the trade deadline acquisition and the person out of the buy that's helped our secondary the most has actually been someone who's been here the entire time. And we've been able to find a way to get him in. That's the way I'm looking at it. Look, I'm all optimism right now. I'm all optimism
I
right now.
like it.
There's not much to be upset about, and there's not much to pick apart. These type of games are hard to analyze, in my opinion, because things went so well. And this isn't
Mm.
typical in the NFL. But if we're looking at it this way, we're looking at a team that had Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones didn't play, obviously, but he still was fine out there. And for his first
Mhm.
action in a while, for him to perform that way, it could springboard him. It could. That's all I'm saying.
I like that outlook. I like that perspective. And, Ambry was banished to the shadow realm. So the fact that he got a start and he played pretty well. Again, no cornerback's going to be perfect, just like no offensive lineman's going to be perfect. That's why I sympathize with the struggles of some cornerbacks. However, they get a little bit more love because they get the interceptions and PBUs and they get some hype. But you know, transitioning to the offensive side and kind of looking at the offensive line, we'll start there and we'll go outward from there. Um, what did you think of the offensive line's performance? Any particular player stand out to you, good or bad, on the O line?
Mongo. It's time.
Mongo.
It's time, man. It's funny because Kyle Shanahan spoke about Feliciano already being basically set for the role that Daniel Brunskill had, relieving Spencer Burford. And I was so upset all offseason about Daniel Brunskill leaving because I don't know, and perhaps someone can correct me. I don't know if anybody on any team has a player that says, oh, our center's down, step on in. Oh, our guard is down, step on in. Oh, our tackle's down, step on in. There's no relief pitcher for every single position.
All five, not just
Oh,
one left
right.
side or right side, all
And
five spots.
and when I say Brunskill comes in, it doesn't mean he's dominant. But can you expect baseline competency from someone straight off the bench who can just get you through the game and execute the offense for you? So now you've got Feliciano who steps in for Banks. He had an incredible game in this game. He was one of the driving forces in this game. And you
Mhm.
hear Kyle Shanahan say, hey, I've got him pegged for a role where he's going to be relieving Spencer Burford. And then he says, well, Jalen Moore could play right tackle. Right guard, right tackle, you are on notice. And that has nothing to do with me. That's not my opinion. That's not me putting you on notice. That's Kyle Shanahan putting you on notice, right? And we talked a lot about Jalen Moore and how good he was while he was at left tackle, while Trent was gone. And clearly, Trent Williams was not 100% in this game either, by the way, like 100%. If I see 4 pressures in the box score, Trent's hurt. Trent's hurt. That's it. I
Yeah,
don't even have to watch the
Trent
film.
was
Trent's
not
hurt. Trent's hurt.
himself.
Right.
Trent was
Trent's
not
hurt.
himself at all.
Trent's hurt. And it's only going to get better from there.
But he
But
still made DBs run away from him. But
A hundred percent, dude.
he
And
definitely
he has the insane acceleration. Like he's like lollygagging at the line, and then he sees where it's supposed to go, and he has this burst that has just made the DB run away. I would have ran too. Like what the hell? But
anyone
but
would have.
right. But Feliciano steps in now, and then Jalen Moore, who we talked about, like starts at left, and you can't flip it to right. But they're already talking about just trying to teach him right tackle because of kind of what you're seeing right now at this point. And for me, it screams that this team is now evaluating this entire roster and saying, hey, if we have any sort of like chink in the armor at this point, it's probably the right side altogether, which is a little bit more disappointing for Burford than it is McKivitz. And I want to make sure I explain that. Burford's going into his second year. And last year, the idea was that Brunskill would be there to keep him from being overwhelmed. These are Kyle Shanahan's words. So you expect that when you kind of ease him in all through last year, that you just can let him go and you expect some improvement. While Burford had a pretty good game, Brad, and I think you can't deny that he didn't. Like, he had a pretty good game. And by PFF standards, that was his best game of the season. Like, he actually had a pass blocking grade that wasn't like 28.6 in this one. Like, and that's so low out of 100. Yeah. But it's clear that this team knows the right guard side. The right side is it. Brendel had a really good game as well too. I want to make sure I shout him out as well too. But with Trent, if you see 4 pressures, just that's an aberration, and he's clearly not himself. But it's the right side, and that's why Kyle keeps bringing this up unsolicited about Feliciano's been practicing well. We've been talking about getting him in as a rotational guy, and then hey, Jalen Moore might take a right tackle side. That's not me putting you on notice. That's your coach saying that. So it's definitely a point of contention, and it also kind of lines up with what a lot of fans have been seeing. You know how sometimes we sit here and we're like, fans are being over harsh, or they're judging too hard. Well, sometimes fans know what they're seeing, and the coaches see the same thing. So, like, that's my overall takeaway. I thought Feliciano and Brendel were great. I think Trent's going to be fine. Obviously, he gets the benefit of the doubt. I think Burford had a good game, but Burford and McKivitz are both now on watch because of the emergence of these guys. And then think about this, 49ers fans, before I pass it to Brad. He's going to give you way more in-depth offensive line talk than I am. Think about how many teams have 7 options. 7 that they can go to, right? Like, okay, Jalen Moore played well at left tackle. Let's see what he's got at right tackle. Okay, Feliciano hasn't played at all. Okay, let's see what he's got at right guard when Banks comes back. Not many teams have that. So while we're talking about offensive tackle depth and offensive line depth, maybe the 49ers have more options than we believed because we just hadn't seen it.
Yeah, so I think that's a great assessment of the entire offensive line. Trent wasn't himself. He definitely. I think I saw a tweet from, I think it was Kyle Posey. He was like, they said Trent was about 80% heading into the game. He looked like he was 60%. And I'd be like,
Easily.
yeah, he looked like he was damn near 45%. Like, that was one of the rougher games in Trent's career, like in recent memory, I guess I should say. Just because he was going up against some pretty quality edge rushers in Allen and Walker, and they have a good speed to power. And I think the biggest issue with the ankle is anchoring. Like you talked about it, he can get out and burst. He could run in a straight line, but when you're getting pushed back, you have a 330-pound frame, and then you're stopping probably about 600 pounds of force being driven at you. That's a lot to put on an ankle, and so it definitely wasn't typical of his technique, his footwork, or anything like that. But as we know, he was injured, and so I think Trent's going to be fine. I don't think that's going to be the issue. For me, I would say the biggest concern was how often Colton McKivitz was getting pushed back in pass rush. I think that was where it was like, ooh, like he was, putting himself in position to make the block. He just wasn't anchoring. He wasn't dropping the hips. And as a result, he was just getting driven back into the quarterback pretty consistently. So I think that was one of like the things where my red flags were going up. I was like, man, Colton's done a decent job this season after the Pittsburgh game at being able to hold up decently well in pass protection. He'll give up 1 or 2 a game where he kind of gets driven back. This one was more consistently, and it was with guys like Walker, his number 1 overall pick, but he still hasn't really found his footing in the NFL and stuff like that. So that was like, I'm like, all right, that's a little more than normal. Like the rate that we're seeing Colton get driven back, it is a little concerning. And then with Burford, he played well, but those two, like, there's a starch difference of watching Trent, Feliciano, and Brendel double to backer versus Colton and Burford double to backer, or Burford and Brendel double to backer. It's just not as clean. Like, they were able to get just enough on like 4 plays. But when you're watching Feliciano and Trent, or you're watching Feliciano and Brendel, the initial contact on the double is clean. They split the man. They read it on the right timing. The other guy's able to peel. The other guy takes over the block. And you're like, boom. I mean, you had a couple big CMC plays run off clean doubles from Feliciano, whether with Brendel or with Trent. It's those things that I think when I talk about the issues with the offensive line, I think we talked about this last week, was like, because everyone's trying to point to the individual. And I'm like, it's not necessarily the individual, it's the unit. It's the unit playing consistently well together. And what you see from Feliciano thrown in at left guard is consistency. That was the biggest change from the offensive line with Feliciano being put in there. And I talked about it even with Banks. Banks is good. I think he's best as a pass blocker, still getting his footing as a run blocker, but he's inconsistent in the run game. Feliciano's consistent. And I think that's where you see the kind of run game come to life a little bit, is because you got some consistency out of your left guard. And also Trent was still balling in the run game. You saw him crashing and washing guys out in the run game. So he was doing it there. It was just he was struggling in pass protection. So the biggest thing that I see is that Feliciano, if he puts up another game like he just did against the Jags, and he played extremely well against the Cowboys earlier in the season when he had to come in in the half, I think, played a whole half against the Cowboys. He's consistent. And that is such an underrated aspect of playing offensive line. Like, you can have those big pancakes. You can have those sick technical aspects where you're chopping dudes to the ground. Makes for a sick highlight. But if you're getting beat every third, fourth play, that is a huge problem for an offensive line and an offensive line coach. So that's where Feliciano has to be a starter moving forward if he duplicates this performance. And it might come at the detriment of Burford, but it's a hard thing to juggle, right? Because Burford's your young, ascending player. He's got a ton of talent, ton of potential. But this team, do we develop potential, or do we plug in a guy that we don't have to even think twice about? And that's, I think, where they're at. And I think because the Banks injury, it saves Burford from them making that adjustment out of the bye where Feliciano started at right guard. I think that's where they were headed. But the thing is now if we see that change, Banks comes back. I think they got to put Banks back. We know the potential he has. And you flip Feliciano to right, the whole fan base, I think, will understand it, especially if he puts in another game. So we could see some adjustments. And you talked about Jalen Moore. That could be adjustment as well.
Yeah, and again, this just goes to show that the team is still being evaluated. They're still trying to figure things out, right? Isaiah Oliver's on the field for a while. Okay, now you're not working. We got to make a move. Feliciano's been putting together great practice reps. Okay, we've got to get him in there. Again, this team, when we look at them, they're not a finished product in terms of the execution. They're also not a finished product in terms of personnel groups. And the team is always going to evaluate those things. And again, we 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 kind of chastise sometimes the 49ers for not addressing offensive line, but I will give them credit for being able to find production from guys that are just kind of sitting around, like almost like bargain basement type stuff, right? We saw Tom Compton be good. Daniel Brunskill comes from another league, like not even the NFL.
Undrafted free
Right,
agent. Yeah,
right.
like
And you
was a
find guys
tight
that
end
can
at one point.
right, that can give you competency, right? And I think that's the difference. No one is trying to tell you that Feliciano is this top guard in the league or, anything like that. I think that's where it kind of gets lost. But I do think the idea of baseline competency and being able to have someone who can come in and perform at the position is incredibly underrated, especially
Mhm.
Brad, because I feel besides quarterback to backup, the only other position group that you see the largest drop off from starter to backup is offensive line. And that's why some people don't even have five good offensive linemen or five starters, right? Some people don't even have five. The 49ers have a few options right now going into the next week. And that's something that, again, you can be concerned about that because we've seen the quarterback injuries, but it's still okay to give credit to the fact that these guys find production in places that you would have never found with those guys, with guys who have been tossed around or just tossed aside. And I think that is something that should be at least noted.
Yeah. And hey, Feliciano to me was a starting caliber offensive lineman when they signed him for like basically the veteran minimum. And sure enough, that's exactly what he's proving to be. So it's going to be interesting to see how he continues to perform moving forward and what the final adjustments are. But I think you can also look back on past seasons. Like look at the 2021 season when the San Francisco 49ers lost Raheem Mostert. What did they do? They had to turn to Debo Samuel out of the wide back by around week 6, week 5, week 6, make the adjustment. Offense, he backpacks the offense to the NFC Championship game. So, if there's one thing to give a lot of additional credit for, is Kyle Shanahan and his coaching staff know how to make adjustments with personnel. They know how to give guys opportunities, but also know when to make a shift when things just aren't working. So it's going to be interesting. To Burford's credit, he did have a pretty solid game. But Feliciano had a better game. Feliciano, in my opinion, was the best offensive lineman
Me
on the
too.
field for the 49ers. And when that's your best offensive lineman coming up off the shelf, he shouldn't be on the shelf for too much longer if he turns in another performance like that. So it'll be
For sure.
interesting to see what we get from Feliciano moving forward. Roberto says Brad and Jason are royally goated. Ooh,
Oh wow,
we're royal. We're royalty
I
over
love it.
here.
Shout out to Roberto.
Justin quickly says, "Did you guys see Jason Brett got released? What do you think of adding him if he's healthy? What do you got quickly on that one?"
For the vibes, absolutely. Bring him on the practice squad. Bring him on the practice squad. See what happens. I mean, D'Amico thought enough of him to try to bring him in. But yes, he did just get released. I wanted them to take a shot on Jack Jones as well too. His record and all that stuff be damned. Um, you know, uh, I'm of the mind when I see a person who's damaged, I can fix them. So I kind of hope that the 49ers felt the same exact way, but he didn't make it to the team either way. But yeah, I mean, at this point, stockpile as much as you can on the practice squad. I don't think people are really going to be all over Jason Verrett on your practice squad and trying to take him off of there. And you never know. But again, who knows how much he has left in the tank? But again, on the practice squad, it's no harm, no foul.
Yeah, it's zero risk,
Yep.
potential reward, and
Hmm.
he's a guy that the 49ers love.
Yep.
So if you wanted to, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see what the
Yep.
49ers do to fill that final 53-man spot and whatever, how they fill out the practice squad, what they do. They have some roster moves to make,
Yep.
so it's going to be interesting. Well, Jason, we've done something unprecedented in 49ers content
We didn't
creation
talk about the
history.
quarterback.
We didn't talk about Brock Purdy
Wow.
until officially 48 minutes on the clock. So the people want to know,
Hmm.
is Brock Purdy for real? What is he? I think I asked you this question last week.
Hmm.
Has your answer changed?
No. In fact, it's been reinforced. Brock Purdy has largely been this guy aside from moments. Moments. Don't lose sight of the forest staring at the trees because of the interceptions at crucial times, which are in the red zone or on the last. Largely, he's been this guy. And when he plays clean, that's what you get. When you look at the numbers, it bears out his season very well. Last week we talked about it. I went through all his numbers. I went through everywhere he is right now in terms of how many dropbacks. It was very similar with many improvements. Brock Purdy is fine.
Yeah.
It's funny how this works.
Yeah.
Do not turn the football over, you win games. Do
Ooh.
not fumble the football, you win games. It was always things that could be corrected. And I
Oh.
talked about it, and I'm going to say it again. In the Cincinnati game, he was the best quarterback on the field for a large portion of that game. A large portion. And Joe Burrow was hooping. Brock Purdy was
Mm.
the best quarterback on the field. But then in the fourth quarter, interception, interception, fumble, game gets out of hand, right? It's those little stretches that have clouded his overall body of work this season. And this week, Obviously, you have the touchdown pass that Kyle called the worst decision, which Kyle just let it go, dude. Just like, come on, man. Like, I just understand why you have to be so blunt. And I made such a good Major League reference about it. It's the manager says, "Nice catch, Hayes. Don't ever do it again." That's literally probably what Kyle said to Purdy. But the throws that were on tape, everybody looks at that Kittle throw, which I thought was very impressive because the drop back lined up with the dig route, meaning it's not going to be a 7-step. You get to 5, and that's why it looks like the pocket's collapsing very much, even though it is on Colin McKivitz, which it definitely was. But the ball gets out and it gets to that spot. That's a play that when a quarterback in that muddy pocket, the ball would either be underthrown, thrown out of bounds, or just a sack. There's so many throws.
Some guys don't even throw that ball.
Right.
They're just, oh, I'm screwed. Escape.
So many throws in this game were impressive that he makes look routine. Yes. And for what are we in? Were we in week 10 now? I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we're heading into week 11.
Where we headed into week 11. Through 10 weeks, 9 games for Brock Purdy. It's been much more good than bad. Much more good than bad. Like, it's not even close. And he just played another great game. I mean, I don't know what else other people want. I think my frustration, Brad, and I'll reiterate this because I did say this on Bully Ball, so anybody who's heard this rant before, please just disregard and just wait for Brad to talk again. But my problem is it's like, oh, well, he's better than Justin Herbert. He's better than Trevor Lawrence. Who cares? Who cares? When he operates the offense in that way, I don't care where you rank him. Rank him 3, rank him 10. Who cares? That's a conversation that people are using to just get upset. I don't care. When he operates the offense in that way, the 49ers are going to win games. I don't care where you rank them. Quarterback rankings are for conversations, angry arguments, discussions, Twitter engagement, and YouTube videos. I don't care about that. None of that matters. It doesn't matter where you rank Brock Purdy. As long as Brock Purdy plays like that and his offense operates like that and doesn't turn the football over, the 49ers are going to be fine. And I don't care where you rank them because I have no interest in talking about whether I think he's better than Justin Herbert or Trevor Lawrence or this guy. I don't care. None of it matters. Let him play like that every single week, and the 49ers are as tough as an out as it gets. And that's all that should matter at this point.
Brock looks like a 10-year vet in this system.
Yep.
In what we would call probably one of the most complex systems in the NFL by Kyle Shanahan. We know that there's nothing easy about it. You hear any of these players talk about it. You talk about all the different checks at the line. You talk about all the different keys that they have to pay attention to. And the quarterback has to be in the middle of it all. He's got to know everything that's going on. And not only is he not slowed down by that, but he's speeding up the offense almost. And I think what you said is he makes great throws look routine. I think the most routinely great throw that he makes are those 25 to 30 yard deep in breaking routes on the money to Ayuk, just like he's sleepwalking. He holds the safety and just goes whoop, and flips it on a rope right to him. He makes these consistently week in, week out, multiple a game. And then he makes throws off of that. Like he's able to do it on the run. He has mobility. He has great pocket awareness. Like his pocket awareness is top notch. Like his ability just to sense a little bit of pressure and take even a slight little stutter. He had one play where Colton McKivitz was giving pressure. He took one little slight stutter and the guy tried to swipe at him. And he just that little move was enough to create the separation. And he let it rip. I mean, Brock's great. Like he's phenomenal for like all the things that everyone tries to tear him down for. He's just a good quarterback. Like I don't know how anyone like we can always make better decisions. That applies to any walk of life. And of course it's going to apply to football game. It can apply to defense. It can apply to offense. It can apply it. Look at Kyle. You know, he wants to talk about decision making. I've been ribbing him all week about being the furthest one on the field on the Ambry Thomas one, just to, you know, kind of get back at him a little bit. Shout out Kyle. Still love Kyle though. But it's like, hey man, we talk about decision making all the time, and that was Brock's biggest hurdle, was just taking care of the football and not making some decisions in certain spots or whatever. Like the process over results. That's something you always talk about. Like
Yeah.
some of the results of Brock's interceptions, those couple games weren't the result we wanted, but you could still see the process at play. Like the one against Jawan Jennings against Minnesota. He just threw it out there with anticipation, with the free rusher in his face. He put it out there to a spot where he thought Jawan was going to be, and he wasn't. And you could say he was concussed. You can say he wasn't concussed. It doesn't matter. But you can look at the process and be like, the process was right. Just the placement ultimately overall wasn't ideal,
Yeah.
and it turned into interception. So that's what his plays look like to me. For me, throughout the way Brock has responded, the way he's answered, all of these different things out of the bye, I really don't have concerns about Brock. Like,
No.
I don't. I don't have concerns about his elbow anymore. I don't have concerns about his arm strength. Like the play that he had to George Kittle perfectly exemplifies how he can get this ball out to where he needs to get it. He constantly shows it, whether on the move, whether from the pocket, whether a muddy pocket, whether a clean pocket, whether he's got to move within the pocket. He can navigate all the garbage and make it look clean. And it goes back to last year too. I think what I talked about is like Brock makes the the small details look so easy that you don't even pick it up. It's like when we watch guys that are at the top of their game at what they do, that the difficult things look easy. He makes all the small, intricate processing nuance of the game at times look very easy that we don't even pay attention to it sometimes. So I got no questions with Brock. I mean, I, I've felt very strongly, and obviously there's two there's two sides to this. We can be overreactionary,
Mhm.
like with his game against the Dolphins last year, with his destroying Tom Brady in the Bucks in his first start with a broken rib, and then going
Mhm.
on a short week with a broken rib and beating Seattle. We can be overreactionary and be like, "Oh, he's better. He's way better than Jimmy. He's playing like a top 10 quarterback." All these different types of things. But when you look at the body of work, man, he's a good quarterback. Like you cannot argue that. You cannot argue it at all, and you cannot make an argument that he isn't the best quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has had since Matt Ryan.
Yeah, easily. And one more thing about the Brock Purdy thing, because I want to get your take on this. The Brock Purdy discourse is so bizarre. And what I mean by that is it's the rush to say that he's top 5, top 10, or the rush to say that he's not good at all.
Yeah.
And the young man hasn't even started his 15th game yet. And Brad, when Trevor Lawrence struggles, well, he needs more weapons. Well, it's his coaching. Well, just give him some time.
It's the
Oh,
Jaguars.
it's the Jaguars, or if it's even like guys like Justin Fields. Well, I'd like to see him with an offensive coach, or everybody gets a little bit more time, but with Brock, he has to be a finished product right now. He has to either be this good or this trash. And there's
Right.
nobody right now that is sitting there going through the proper quarterback evaluation process with him. In which what's the rule of thumb we say, Brad, when a quarterback comes in the league? I need 3 years. I need 3 years as a body of work before I can come to a strong conclusion if there isn't strong evidence for much of that. And there's no way that you're gonna get me after 15 games to automatically make a grand proclamation one way or the other. Has he been playing great? Absolutely. I've been the one telling you guys like, hey, he's been playing very well. Like largely, he just has those little stretches. But for some reason, and I think it has to do with his draft capital, everyone is out to prove that he's really good or really bad. And I don't understand. I don't understand it. And I don't think that it's as simple as him as people saying he's top 5 or he's trash. The answer's somewhere in the middle. It's not black or white. It's gray. It's gray. And the rush to knock Brock down has to do with, well, it's Shanahan's scheme. Oh, well, I mean, anybody with those playmakers can do that. Oh, well, he's just dinking and dunking. there's so much to the quarterback position that I don't think that there's any way for you to get to a conclusion on a quarterback after 15 starts. It's just impossible unless you want to be in a rush to be the guy that said I told you so, or I saw it because I know ball, instead of being patient, right? Like it's always I told you, but then when it's a bad game, it's like you brush it off. It's like, guys, everybody slow down, everybody, right? There's a way to objectively say that Brock Purdy has been playing very good football. That does not mean that you need to throw yourself out the window and say he's top 5, or that doesn't mean you have to throw yourself out the window and say, well, he's going to be trash. I've never seen a quarterback have no sort of spectrum of where he could land, either here or here. There's nowhere in between for Brock Purdy. There's nowhere in between. It's either he's the man or he's trash. And I've never seen it ever, because there is no sort of nuance, or there is no sort of evaluation process. For some reason, when it comes to Brock Purdy, Brad Graham, that has been tossed completely aside. We need to make grand statements on him right now after 15 starts. You need to know right now what he is, as if he can't get better, or as if there's something else in his realm of possibilities, Brad. I don't think I've ever seen a quarterback in this be judged this way ever, in my opinion.
No, it's crazy because he's Mr. Irrelevant. So the entire league
That's
agreed he's not worthy of being an NFL quarterback, and he's out here proving every single person wrong. And then the second he has any slight step back,
there it is. Told you. Like that's what I'm saying.
Any of the people who've had priors, see, I told you. That's why people were whispering for Sam Darnold to potentially be the starter heading out of the bye. Like,
Sam Darnold's the reason that Christian McCaffrey hasn't scored. This is all on you, Sam. I'm sorry.
Breaking news: Brock Purdy benched mid-drive.
And then they tried to get the ball to McCaffrey, and it's like, man, if you'd just let Brock in for a little bit more, he would have put that right on the money, and McCaffrey scores and sets the NFL record. Thanks a lot, Sam. Way to go, pal.
Thanks a lot, Sam. It's all your fault.
It's all your fault, man.
No, it's 100%. I mean, and we know what it is. We live in a hot take world. Everyone's got a podcast. Like, everyone's got a platform. That's what social media does. So everyone's trying to get their takes out there, and it is what it is. And so, no one really cares about your takes unless you have a hot one. Like, no one, how many people are going to like talk about someone's take where they sat there and talked for 35 minutes and broke it down from 15 different angles to provide this crazy level of nuance, and then it's like, he's a good quarterback. That's at the end of it. It's like, he's a good quarterback, and they're like, oh, well, is he better? Is he better than Mahomes though?
What right? What rips?
Would you rather have Lamar Jackson or Purdy? Which one is it? That's what we want.
Like, what rips the headlines is, Justin Herbert has a down game, and they're just like, oh, well, Brock's already better than Justin Herbert, or Trevor Lawrence. Look, he outplayed Trevor Lawrence, and look at the numbers. It's just like, guys, there's ways to evaluate quarterbacks, right? Like, and numbers alone don't do it. And if you want to go by numbers alone, then that's fine. But numbers have to be married to the tape. Numbers have to be married to the tape, right? Like, again, like, Trevor Lawrence didn't have a good game on Sunday. He did not. The 49ers defense was great, but Trevor Lawrence didn't have a good game. Objectively, you can say that. But there's been times where Trevor Lawrence has thrown the ball right into the receiver's hands for touchdowns that have been dropped. That would have exponentially thrown his numbers up, 14, 15 touchdowns, if all they do is catch the ball. But if you're looking at the box score, you're like, he's only got 9 and 5. Oh my God, he's terrible. It's like, guys, there's a middle ground for everything. And everything doesn't have to be so finite.
Right. And I was like, I tried to I think I posed this question in a sense on, I think it was the offensive film breakdown. It was like, let's say, Jason, you've been in a coma for 5 years, and ball, what you're watching, what you're identifying, and you wake up and I say, Jason, I want you to watch this game, 49ers versus Jags. One quarterback was the first overall pick, and one quarterback was Mr. Irrelevant. Watch this game and tell me which one is which.
I would have said Brock.
Brock looked like the elite quarter. elite quarterback. I want to make sure I put the quotations around that.
Yeah, for all two
before
of
I
them.
get clipped. Before I get clipped.
But hold on for Brad. For all two of the elite quarterbacks. I love that. Is he elite? Who's
Right.
elite? I think it's like two of them right now. It's not even Josh Allen at this point.
Josh Allen has more interceptions than Brock Purdy, right?
It's like I love that elite discussion, right? I love it, right? Because I want to ask people dead in their face and look them in the eye. Who's elite? It might be one guy right now in the league. One guy, and his name's Mahomes. Everybody else might not be elite. And that's what's so funny about that. When they're like, oh, Brock's elite. No. Mahomes is elite. We can't even say Burrow's elite because of how he's played this entire season. Josh Allen's falling out of it. Lamar's had some bad games this year. Jalen Hurts, I don't think is elite. It's so funny how everybody wants to say, well, this guy's elite, this guy's elite. There might just be one. There might just be one as of today, right now, who's elite. And even he's got bad games under his belt. The reason that we say that Mahomes is elite is because he's won chips. That's what's so funny about the quarterback discourse.
Yeah.
1 week you could be number 2. 1 week you could be number 8. 1 week you could play like you're 15. So I don't understand this rush to like move Brock into this tier that only one guy really is in, because he's the only guy in the rarefied air to have that many championships, make those mind-boggling plays. You can live with the down games because Mahomes has won championships. I'll never get that, Brad.
Did you know that quarterbacks play better with better weapons? Did you know that?
Well, all right. So back to the argument that I was making, right? So when quarterbacks struggle, right, in any way, right, there's still people that believe that Matt Jones is a good quarterback, even though everything to the contrary has been shown. But the large excuse is, man, he has no weapons around him. But that sort of time is never given to Brock Purdy because of his supporting cast, because of his play caller. And it's just so funny to me how all these other guys, even for God's sakes, Brad, there are people that are trying to convince you that Sam Darnold still might be good. And there's such a large sample size of him being awful. And yet, we've got to rest a judgment on Brock Purdy after 15 starts, which have largely been good. We have to tell you whether he's elite or whether he's terrible, instead of still going through the evaluation process. It's insane to me that this process is thrown out completely when it comes to Brock Purdy. And this, like, there's someone in this world will probably try to tell you that they think Jameis Winston still has a chance to be very good. There's always an excuse for someone else. With Brock, everything has to be so final, and I don't understand it. It's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating because I think the perception of where someone starts their career, they really have a hard time kind of understanding like how a guy that could be passed over that many times can be this good. And they just have a really hard time, I think, trying to quantify it, trying to make sense of it, because also I've talked about this before too, Jason, and I'm sure you've seen it play out. Hype in general, especially in today's world, attracts trolls. Like, it just attracts trolls because they're like, ooh, look at all these people getting excited about this. It's like a what is it? A fly to the flame, a gnat to the flame, a moth to the flame, whatever. Like, they're just attracted to people getting excited about something. And when you can add the element of Mr. Irrelevant, 6'1", kid from Iowa driving tractors in the bye week, out here dicing up the what we were told was a really good Jags defense, creating turnovers at an extremely high rate. And then you have Mr. John Deere come out, dice you up, put 300 on your head and 3 touchdowns with a nearly perfect passer rating. Like, how do we quantify this? But he just threw game sealing picks against the Bengals. But again, like, to your point, there's no nuance. The reason why the 49ers were in that game was because of Brock Purdy. It just ultimately kind of fell apart at the end. And he was responsible for that. He had his role in that. But just like all quarterbacks across the league, and you've pointed to this, Jason, all of them have struggles. And that's where you are continuing to pose the question is, why is everything so finite with Brock? when across the league, guys have good days, guys have bad days. We live in such a week to week. You talked about that, a week to week kind of silo of content that it there's like a legitimate like revamping of the takes 1 week at a time in the NFL. So the guys who can do it the most consistently are going to climb up the ladder the most. The reason why Brock is so up and down now is because people were already questioning him, but then he had the MVP frontrunner hype and then kind of fell back to reality a little bit. And then it was like, oh, see,
and then again, the whole idea of like Brock being an MVP frontrunner was not something that I feel like a lot of people were pushing. It's just when someone hears something from a small minority of people, it turns into a narrative. And especially if somebody like a national media, they get their hands on it and they want to like push back on that, right? Like you should be allowed to form your opinions and change them as you get new information. Let's start over, right? With this whole Brock Purdy thing, right? Brad, you and I went to training camp where Brock Purdy was there. There would be days where he wouldn't even get any snaps. And sometimes when he did, it did not look good.
I wasn't paying attention to Brock Purdy.
It's fine. No, I know. But I look around and I say, hey, listen, I didn't see anything in training camp that would imply that this guy is going to be, right? Then he goes out in the preseason and he does it, right? If you are rigid, if you are absolutely rigid and want to dig in your heels into something that you saw without using information to properly form that opinion and change it and be objective, then that's when you find yourself rooting for someone to fail just so you can confirm a prior. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are doing that based on draft capital, based on, well, no arm strength. Well, he's little. Like it's all these little things. It's like people have a tough time wrapping their heads around that's someone who isn't 6'5" with a rocket arm or can run like a whatever 40. I mean, even though his splits are really good in 10 yards, they have a hard time believing that someone can succeed at the quarterback position. And then when you can't knock down his physical attributes because of what you're seeing, you have to knock it down with play calling, with his playmakers, with how easy the quarterback system is. And it's just, you lose objectivity when you confirm priors. I could have sat there and just completely like anytime he threw an interception, see, I told you this is what I said. No. The larger body of work has shown you that whatever I saw in training camp and what many people saw is not symbolic of the player that he could be and what he's doing now. Sometimes guys aren't practice players. Sometimes as a rookie, you're trying to figure things out, and sometimes guys figure it out. So when you find yourself trying to confirm a prior is when you find yourself losing credibility. I would rather 10 out of 10 times come out and say, hey, listen, my initial diagnosis on this young man was wrong. I've seen this, and this, that's improvement. If you cannot say that you are impressed by his improvements, by his play, regardless of what you thought when you first saw him, when he was first drafted or how at training camp, now you have backed yourself into a corner that you can't get yourself out of, and you find yourself rooting against the young man, which is a sad, sad thing, as opposed to trying to get it right and not be right. That I will always stand on that and stand on business 10 out of 10 times when it comes to that. I'm standing on business. Standing on business. Doing something that y'all people will never do. Standing on business. 50 against one man army.
I think the biggest way you back yourself into a corner is you have your take, you're proven wrong, you have to apologize and give the credit where credit is due, and then a slip up occurs, and then you go back and say, see, I told you. That's where you're just along for the ride, right? That's where you actually aren't. Your opinion really doesn't mean anything because you have to succumb to what is occurring. So you have to change your narrative to fit. And then once it fits your original narrative, you're like, see, I told you. And then it goes back to the other narrative. And then you look like a fish out of water. You're just flopping back and forth. Like, and what's your point? What's your take? What do you believe in? What do you actually believe in?
What do people prefer? Do you prefer that I just say, hey, listen, this was my original thoughts on him, and this is it, I'm just standing by it? Or would you prefer someone who's humble enough to say, I got it wrong, and I am now objectively seeing something that is impressive and being able to tell you? Like, there really is a no-win situation when, you and I, we put ourselves out here so much, right? Like, and we have to like
Yeah.
get in front of the camera all the time, right? Because everybody can just be like,
Yeah.
well, here's your take from this. Is this you? Well, it was me. I am greater than I was. I'm always growing and evolving, especially when it comes to evaluations and in all walks of life. So do you
Mhm.
want me to just stand rigid on that stance? Or do you want me to be able to say, listen, I've seen some things that have completely changed my mind because he's actually been playing very well. So it's like when people are like, oh, you can't give him praise. Yes, I can. And yes, I will, because I refuse to just try to stand on something just to say, hey, listen, this is what I said back then, so nothing can change my mind, and that's it.
No
It's
new information changes
it's literally
anything.
it's literally
It
a
is
no-win situation for us. It's a no-win situation for us. Oh, remember when you said this 2 years ago? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I was thinking 2 years ago. 2 years later, I don't feel the same way because we have new information. Like, it's the most silly conversation that I've ever heard when it comes to giving nuance to quarterback position play.
Absolutely. Let's get into a couple super chats. DJ says, exactly. This was from a while ago. Exactly. Well said, Jason. Plus, he's a 49er quarterback. So that adds
That doesn't
extra
help
high
either.
hopes.
That
No,
doesn't
it
help either.
doesn't.
No.
Especially with the current state of the 49ers quarterback discussion for 6 years.
So, no.
Which
Well, since
you can
since
even go
Steve Young.
beyond that. You can go,
Since
yeah,
Steve Young.
since Steve
Since
Young.
Steve
You
Young.
can go
We've been
beyond
looking
that.
for our guy since Steve.
It's like little microcosms, but when you take a further step out, it's like since Steve Young, we've been trying to figure it out. Let's see. Gammon says we have 3 games on a tight schedule. Can Trent hold up? Who's the best run blocking right tackle, and why is it Matt?
I defer to the offensive line guru on this one, because it would have seemed like the first right tackle off the bench is Matt Pryor. But when you listen to Kyle Shanahan talk, he's like, man, we got to try to see what we got with Jalen Moore, who basically has to, real quick to summarize what Brad's going to say in much more detail. If you're taught to block one way, left tackle, you're taught to block like backwards on the other side. Like, you literally have to do it. You have to have a completely different process. So does it say something that Kyle Shanahan wants to see Jalen Moore learn something backwards at the position than to play the guy that actually has played the position, Brad Graham?
Well, it's not only physically backwards, it's mentally backwards. Like,
yes, everything.
Your responsibility as a left tackle on this play becomes completely different as your responsibility on the right tackle on the same exact play. But your mind has to be able to process, I'm not at left tackle anymore. I'm at right tackle, and my stance is completely mirrored, and everything I have to do is mirrored. And so unless you are super capable and comfortable at making that switch, it isn't that simple. That's why we saw Jalen Moore get a start at right tackle in 2021. Guess who? The Jags. He got benched the drive before halftime for Tom Compton because he couldn't pass off a stunt to save his life. And Brunskill was out there fighting for his life because those two couldn't play together because he's only played on left tackle before. We have not seen Jalen Moore at right tackle in training camp, in preseason, in a regular game since 2021 against the Jags.
Great call.
He got benched at right before halftime, not an adjustment after halftime. They were like, okay, this is bad. We got to get him out of here. Tom Compton. We know what Tom Compton ended up having a great season at right tackle.
Best run blocking right tackle in the league. Tom Compton that year.
Right.
Put some respect on Compton.
Respect on his name.
And now he can't play anywhere. Now he gets no.
What happened? So, although two things can be true, Jalen Moore has built so much more confidence in me for him to be at left tackle. But the question remains, what does that look like at right tackle? Because I know he doesn't rep it unless he does it in scout team, obviously, when we aren't there and we're not watching. But from what I've seen from training camp all the way through, the last couple training camps, preseasons, he's predominantly left tackle. So for him to switch to right is still going to be a process, but we'll see. We'll see if that's ultimately what they decide because
he's talking about it.
He's been playing well enough. I think he's been playing well enough that if you're repping him at right tackle in practice, like Jason, we don't know if he's been repping right tackle all season. Like, what if he was? And then if he was and they feel comfortable with it, I'm 100% putting him in. No offense, Gammon, ahead of Matt Pryor. Matt Pryor hasn't shown anything to me in the preseason, in training camp, to make me believe that he could do anything better than what I've seen from Jalen Moore in 2 games so far. So if they feel comfortable with that, that's the biggest thing. Do they feel comfortable with moving to the right side? If they do, then yes, I would say Colton McKivitz might be in a little bit of a battle to hold his spot. That's the thing in football, man. It's like, especially on the offensive line, if you aren't being consistent and the guy behind you is, they'll only give you so much rope before it's like, all right, well, let's see what happens with this other guy.
Brad, are you in some way saying that Colton is having a problem holding his spot? All right, whatever. Just disregard that and get it out of there.
Colton.
I had to throw a dad joke in there. Come on, man.
Yeah, that one made me. I'm like, okay. I see.
Yeah, you were like, oh wait, what? Yeah, it's all about the inflection of the word. You're trying to rhyme
Exactly.
it. It's like how people say there's no word that rhymes with orange. There is. You just gotta inflect the word and just.
You got to Lil Wayne it. You got to just change it a little.
Sort of. Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens on the offensive line. Specifically, it's the right side. We've been talking about the right side for a long time. Jason says Purdy is actually performing better than Matt Ryan as far as efficiency per play behind Kyle Shanahan. Matt Ryan in 2016 EPA per play is 0.339. Brock Purdy so far in 2023 is at a 0.355 EPA per play. We got SDS dropping advanced analytics in the super chats. That's pretty impressive. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, if you look around with the way that team was built, I can obviously say that the playmakers on the 49ers are better than those playmakers on those teams, right? It's comparable.
Julio.
Well, Julio the GOAT. Like, stop playing.
Sanu playing
Sanu,
well.
I think Debo.
Taylor
I think
Gabriel
Debo
out of the slot.
I think Debo and Ayuk are better a tandem than Sanu and Julio.
Freeman
and Coleman.
Obviously, CMC.
Freeman and Coleman, CMC, right? And then you know what? That wasn't Tony, right? Tony wasn't there for that. Like, I don't think
Hooper.
Oh, Austin Hooper. Yeah, Kittle clears him.
Young Hoop.
Yeah, Kittle clears him. So that's the way that someone would quantify that and say that that's completely different. But
they did have prime Alex Mack, so they had one of the GOAT centers of all time.
Yeah. No, look,
they had a pretty good offensive
This is an interesting number because Matt Ryan is always going to be the standard of a Kyle Shanahan offense because of how good they were that year. It's always going to be compared. Oh, yeah. It's always going to be compared to that. This is such a good number. Now, right now, this is a 9-game sample size with, 8 more to go? Right? 8 more to go. So that number could decrease, could increase. I do think that it's unless these numbers are through 8 games. Unless these numbers are through 8 games. If that's the case, then this is a very tough.
You're saying basically bigger sample size,
right? Bigger sample size is more likely to knock that down, right? Like when you have more attempts, you're gonna have a chance to knock that down, right? Sure. So I don't know if that's what Jason's going at, but I do think that the benchmark for how Kyle Shanahan offenses that are humming get compared to is Matt Ryan in that season in 2016 because the Falcons were just obliterating everyone.
Yeah, for sure. It is interesting though to see those numbers because it does say 2016 EPA and then it said Brock Purdy so far, so it definitely isn't an apples to apples comparison. But so far, even considering the little skid that Brock had with the interceptions, still very efficient with the football. Yep. It's probably one of his best traits is being smart with the football. That's why I think, coming back to Kyle Shanahan, kind of ripping on him a little bit, it just felt like Kyle doesn't really have a lot to rip on Brock Purdy about.
Nope.
And with that win, how it happened, it just felt like his opportunity to kind of be like
a jerk.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's just being Kyle. Like he's being the Kyle that we know. Like that was the worst decision. He channeled his inner Rich Madrid. That was the worst decision I've ever seen.
So I mean, the other throw was all right. It was just a little boring. I mean, it's It's literally him. It's literally him just kind of like throwing a little jab, but also
Yeah.
letting you know, like, again, it isn't always going to be perfect, right? And those type of things. But yeah, that is definitely peak Rich Madrid. By the
I
way,
think it.
I
I think.
by the way,
Go ahead. Go
Brad.
ahead.
By the way, I love Rich real quick, but Rich Madrid and Richard Sherman going at it was not on my bingo card
Bro, I
on
came to
Twitter.
that late and I saw it and I was like, oh
Look,
boy.
Rich, I love you, man. If you're watching, telling Richard Sherman if he watched the tape, that is certainly a decision. That is certainly a decision.
He said that's certainly a
He
decision.
said
A
if you
decision
watch
was
the tape,
made and he made the
I
decision.
I read that and I was like, oh my god. Love you, Rich. I just again, that was certainly a decision, man. I love you, man.
No, but like that's kind of what it felt like with the that's why like I'm having fun ripping Kyle for being on the sideline. It's like the
Yeah.
same thing. It's like I
Well,
love Kyle. I think he's a great coach. Like and he had a great game plan, but I'm gonna rip him for being on the field. Like, why not? Because
right.
in the end, it doesn't really mean anything. Like he scored a touchdown, he made a phenomenal play that would be on Sports Center, top 10 highlights if it was Mahomes making it. I've heard
Right.
that comment a million times. Like,
Yeah.
it's just it is what it is. I think he just took his opportunity because he's always defending Brock. So like that's like the first time where he's like, "Oh, that was the worst decision I've ever seen from
And then
Brock
he doubled
ever." And
down on it. He doubled
yeah, he
down on
did.
it too and
Yeah,
said
he doubled
it
down.
still is. But you know what else too, Brad? I think aside from the post game comments and all that stuff, it's just when you look at down and distance and you think about the way that the 49ers normally would have went about play calls with Brock, like 4th and 1, like they're going for it, like even 2nd and inches, which that Kittle play was. That would never have been the case if there was someone else under there, right? Like 2nd and inches with Jimmy under center would have been what? QB
They
sneak?
do things offensively that I
Right.
wouldn't imagine
That
existed in a Kyle offense because we
that's
watched
far
Jimmy
more
for
telling.
so long.
That's far more telling than any sort of post game conference, quote or anything like that. It's just when you look at down and distance and how the 49ers normally would have operated, you see something completely different with Kyle and Brock, man. And he's just happy that he's found him.
Yeah, no, he loves Brock. I think they have
Yeah.
that type of relationship. And I think, I've talked about it before. Brock's Kyle proof. Not many of the quarterbacks that have came up against Kyle are Kyle proof. I think Kyle is even trying to Kyle proof himself from himself. That was like one of the takeaways from like, I think Posey put out a tweet like, asked Kyle what he worked on in the offseason to improve himself. He's like, oh, I just, read some self-help books trying to, kind of master my mind a little bit more. I was like, oh, look at Kyle. There we go.
Yeah.
So I think it's again, I know Kyle loves Brock,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that's abundantly clear. And so I never took the comment from Kyle coming at Brock as like anything other than kind of like a rib. Like that's
Yeah.
how Kyle ribs his guys.
100%.
Like, and he's
100%.
doing it publicly because he
Right.
know what's the repercussion going to be. He just threw 3 touchdowns, no interception, clean game. One out here beat Trevor Lawrence in this defense. Like nothing's like I'm ribbing him for a phenomenal play. Like that's
Dude.
really how I read it.
If we were hooping and I took a off balance 1-leg 3-pointer from like past the line and it goes in, everybody's gonna right, and it goes straight through, and everybody just gonna look at me like, get the hell out of here with that. Like that's kind of what it is. It's not. It's like okay, it went in, but like it's still at the same time you still got to get your jokes off because it just wasn't like the way that you should be drawing it up. But again,
he's off schedule, cross body, into
right.
traffic, like
right. And Ayuk made a play, and you know what? When it goes that way, and we talked about this right with the defensive play calling. Like if Mooney Ward intercepts that pass at the end of the half against Minnesota, nobody's talking about Wilk's decision to go cover 0 right there because it turns into an interception. Sometimes the result masks the process, and sometimes even me who loves process over results, you kind of just have to go with the ebbs and flow of it and just realize that, hey man, that was just a special nice play right there. And sometimes it can't always be how you drew it up and how you wanted it.
For sure. Gammon says Jason hits a milestone on YouTube subscribers and immediately goes after a quarterback topic.
I got to get to 10K somehow. I cannot keep giving like level-headed assessments and trying to be calm and try like I got to start.
No, we
like,
know Spicy
out.
Aponte is what got you to 8K so far.
Well,
so
sort of, but I've been chilling. I feel like I haven't been going crazy because even after losses, I feel like yeah, and I just feel like people are just like, why aren't you mad? I'm just like, well, there's nothing really I can do about it. So I don't understand like me getting mad, but I know people like to see that. But no, it's just again, it's baffling to watch how Brock Purdy has to be good or bad, and there's never any sort of gray in between, and how the quarterback evaluation process has been taken away.
Right. And it's like we talk so highly about, Jalen Hurts has had some struggles and he's come under fire in some certain situations, but we've talked very highly about Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. It took them 3 years to get to that point where they were talked like that. It
Right,
wasn't like that before. It's like
100%.
evaluation exists, or not evaluation, excuse me. Evolution exists for football players. They either get better or they're getting worse. They're not really
Right.
staying the same.
Mhm.
So what are we getting from a young player? Is it getting better? Is it getting worse? And from what you've seen from Brock, as he continues to improve and he continues to get better.
Yeah.
Beast Mode says, well said, Jason Baker will be running his ass off.
We didn't even talk about Tampa Bay yet.
I know. And then he said, we will bend Baker like, oh.
Well, no. It's not what you think. It's a Game of Thrones reference, Brad. It's a Game of Thrones reference.
I'm not gonna lie, I never got into Game of Thrones, so
That is as egregious a thing that I've ever heard Brad Graham ever say, and I understand that this isn't going to change during football season because of the real warrior that Brad is. But Brad, I swear to God, when off season rolls around, I am not going to
I
let up until you.
tried. I don't know. I put on the first episode and I'm like,
It's
I
hard.
don't
All
know.
right,
I
so
have
look,
ADHD and I'm like,
hmm
I'm not a big show
yeah,
guy to begin with. I'm a background show guy. Like if I'm
right,
doing the dishes or I'm cleaning or I'm doing I got a show on or
yeah.
I'm not a sit in front of the TV and watch a show
So,
guy. It's just not
so Brad, I completely understand what you're talking about when it comes to Game of Thrones, and I tried at least 2 times before it finally all clicked to me. And the
okay.
problem
That's
is
what
that
people kept saying. They kept saying it was a
right.
slow start, right?
Right. The world is so big that they just drop you in the middle of this world and you're like bouncing around from like family to family. There's no narrator telling you this is the Starks, this is Winterfell, this is the Lannisters, this is King's Landing. By the fourth episode, it all clicks and then it just becomes something that you can't turn away from. But those first 3 episodes, they are tough to get through because the world is so big and there's nobody guiding you through it. And you're kind of just
It's just
like,
kinda
who is
hopping
that?
around,
Yeah,
you
like
don't know what's
who is that? Why
happening.
is this happening? What's going on? Like, and then like the show starts with the White Walkers, and then they go away for like seasons, and you don't see them again. So it's like they throw all this stuff at you in the beginning, and then everybody speaks in sonnets and poems, right? Like even when I rewatch it, I'm just like, what the hell did he just say, man? Like, is he against him or is he not? The
It
you know,
sounded beautiful, but I have no idea what he meant by
right.
that.
The North remembers. What do they remember? Who's the North? What are you guys talking about? Like that's kind of how the beginning of that show is, but it does click. So I mean, again, I understand that part of it because I struggled with it early on, but when I got it, dude, I got it, and I just never like got away from it.
I might
Maybe,
try again. I've
maybe.
tried, like, I think 2 separate times. Maybe I just gotta gut it out. If it's the 4th episode is the key, maybe I'll try again. I know everyone loves it.
Mhm.
It's just I just could never get into it. Gammon says, question: did you hear Tim Kawakami's story about how John Lynch had to intervene between Kyle and Sala from coming to blows in an MTV Celebrity Deathmatch? Who wins? Kyle strikes me as a fighter.
Give me, give me Salah. Um, but this lines up with the Playmakers podcast in terms of the competitiveness and how in practice it was about getting the better of each other. And anybody who hasn't listened to that, I don't work for the Athletic. I think Jordan Rodriguez does a great job, but she's not paying me to say this. The Playmakers podcast gives you so much backstory, as in what goes in week to week, what these guys go through trying to figure out game plans, and how guys are trying to get the better of each other. Kyle is competitive. Salah's trying to beat him. When Salah has an answer, Kyle wants to know what's the reasoning behind the answer. And that's how these guys push each other. So that is something that completely lines up with that podcast. So anybody who hasn't listened to it, it's phenomenal. It's 4 parts. It's about Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay, Matt LaFleur, Kyle Shanahan, and there's little parts about Kyle and Salah and D'Amico and everybody else. So yeah, that completely lines up. Like these guys again are ultra competitive, and if we're talking about a fight, give me Salah, man. There's something about him, like that guy has dog in him, man. I don't know if I ever want to piss off Salah, and let's not piss off somebody who has like 12 kids because that man has the patience of a saint and just feels like that can snap at any moment because he's kind of been trying to hold it in. I am not fighting somebody who has 12 kids because that man is ready to snap at any moment. At any moment.
I got
Picture
4.
this.
I can
Right.
totally associate with that.
Picture this, Brad. You're at your building. You are game planning all week. You are under intense pressure to try to find a way to get your team and put them in position. And then you go home and you got 8 kids. 8. You got 8 kids to deal with. It don't stop. That give me
and
the
your
game
wife
planning
being
aspect.
like, where you
Right.
been at all
Where
day?
you been at? Where you been? I'm trying to save my job. I'm trying to get this team going. I would take the game planning and not showering and sleeping like those guys do and like staying in there as opposed to watching 8 kids. Like Cheaper by the Dozen is a horror film. That's not a comedy. It's a sick movie. It is a sick movie to have 12 kids. That's insane. Give me Salah.
Yeah, I'd pick Salah too. But again, man, I think you talked about it pretty well. You know, Kyle's got his own particular personality, right? Like, and one of the things that we hear all the time is Kyle's going to be honest with you. Does that mean he's going to be honest with you about good things all the time, or is he going to be honest about bad things sometimes? And we know humans are humans, and they're all alpha males. And hey, alpha males are going to butt heads. It's just what it is. So,
Yep.
I think there's, as someone who's been, you know, of course, never in an NFL locker room, but in a locker room, it's like I cannot express to you like how divided the offense is from the defense. Like it's almost like a siloed. It's like a siloed. Everyone thinks everyone's best friends. It's like, nah, man. Like I've gotten into fights on the field with defensive players. Like we've gone back and forth. Like it's obviously your same team, same dream, common goal, all those different types of things. And I'm sure it's a lot different in the NFL when this is their job and they're always together and they're traveling and that's just what it is. But like when I was in college, like defense has defensive meetings. They're doing their own thing on the defensive field. We only play really each other in 9-on-7 or 11-on-11, and we're trying to beat the other guy. Like that's how it is. It's like not everything is, you know, rainbow and lollipops just because you wear the same jersey. Like these are humans and they butt heads and they get after it. And it's about having a professional respect for one another, even if you don't like each other. It's about a professional respect of like, we got to go out and we got to put our best foot forward, regardless if I like you or not. We got to coexist in this locker room and we don't want to be a problem. Right. So we got to just, hey, agree to disagree or do whatever. So yeah, I'm not surprised that there's backs and forth and potential fights. And that sounds like football. That's what they do for a living. They hit each other. So, does not surprise me in the slightest. Trent Williams needs a raise.
Oh man. Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right? Isn't he's still the highest paid left tackle?
I don't know.
Because he passed Bakhtiari.
I think Tunsil.
All right, so Tunsil might be. Trent's in the twilight. I think he's good. Like he secured his last bag. I think he's good. But hey, I mean, if I had money to give him, I would.
I mean, he's the GOAT offensive lineman, in my opinion.
I give him the little money out of my, out of my pocket for him.
How many peeps know how Spicy Aponte came
How
out?
did that happen, Brad?
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Did that happen on State of the Franchise?
I mean, it started to gradually happen, and I think it happened during a point of frustration in 2021 when the 49ers were playing poorly.
I think it did happen on State of the Franchise. Did it?
The Tennessee game? I think it was the Tennessee game, or the Seattle game. One of those two
Tennessee
games,
game
right?
Was brutal.
Right, like that Tennessee game where they come out firing and Jimmy misses use check on the leak route, and then I think it was like back to back, like with that Seattle game too, like where like they just were turning the ball over. Aziz was playing out of his mind, and I think I just like the frustration, like again, and it's funny because we're pointing to that stretch of time, and then it's like every year there's those little stretches like that where it's like you are losing games mind-numbingly. Like it's just it's so frustrating, and it was never
Right.
really like so I guess that's kind of where it all came out from. And then sometimes when I have strong opinions or like a comment like gets me triggered is like when you kind of see things like that. But I don't read the comments anymore because you can't win them all, right? Nobody is going to agree with you 100 times, even if you're level-headed, and they hate it when you're level-headed, or people hate it when you're spicy. So I'm just going to do me at this point. But yeah, you know what it is.
Yeah, and Spicy Aponte was born, and a legend in the content creator community was
That is
gifted
like hearing somebody
upon
get all
us.
red in the face and everything. That's it. Like you just want to see somebody get all red and yell and make a fool of themselves.
Keith says, "Did that game say more about the Jags and the Niners?"
I think the Niners, I think the Jags again, they kind of were scuffling offensively. They turned the ball over a lot. The defense was actually kind of bailing them out with the way that they were turning the football over. Now the defense wasn't getting turnovers, and that offense largely looked the same. I think it says a little bit more about the Niners. I think the Jags kind of have been who they are, but they've been bailed out with poor play on offense by the way that that defense was turning the football over for them and creating opportunities and keeping keeping the offenses on the sideline.
Yeah, I think it says more about the Niners being who we thought they were,
Right. Right.
and the Jags kind of just, you pointed to it. They had a lot of good fortune.
Yeah.
Whereas, the 49ers in that 5-game streak, they were dominating and dominating for a reason, and they just got back to those ways. I think it says more about the Niners defense
Yeah.
than anything else. I don't think anything
Hmm.
changed with the offense really, other than no turnovers.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to.
That's what I kept saying all the week. I'm like, the offense is fine, actually. Like the offense is going to be fine as long as you don't fumble in the red zone, as long as you're not throwing the interceptions, as long as you're not missing your field goals. The offense largely moves the football. Once the defense plays like that, then everything locks into place. And again, when you don't turn the football over, breaking news, you find ways to win games.
Turnovers, penalties. That's what it
I mean,
was.
look at the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. Gavin says, "Real talk. How much does this team miss McDaniels?"
I mean, anybody would miss Coach Mike, especially not only because of how funny he is, but how creative he is. I think we need to have a discussion too about Mike because everybody's looking at that team and they're just like, oh, well, look what Mike's doing it. But personnel means so much. It means so much. Tyreek Hill puts so much pressure. They have so much speed everywhere that Coach Mike right now is just playing around with them. Now, if their wide receivers were, and this is not me saying anything bad about them, right? If their wide receivers were Keenan Allen, and let's just say who's not somebody who's like a burner or like Terry McLaurin, right? Let's say that those were the two receivers as opposed to like Waddle and Hill. You're not able to run those cheat motions and put pressure on defenders because that speed is opening things up and it opens up windows for other throws for Tua as well too. So sure, they miss Mike McDaniels because Mike McDaniel because he is so creative with the run game in terms of creating angles, and that's where like you saw those tossbacks to Debo that look like tosses, but they're really inside zone runs to kind of show toss to get the linebackers flowing one way and to be able to cut back. But like a lot of the success that's going on in Miami is based on personnel. Like he wouldn't be running that offense that same exact way. Sure, they would find ways to get guys open. Like I'm not trying to discount it, but the pressure that Hill and Waddle put on them, like everybody in the secondary, everybody's on their heels because you can't cover them. And now you're running Hill at fast motion from one side to the other. Now you're a defender trying to catch him before he gets to the end of the line, and then run with him. A lot of that stuff has to do with why that offense is so good, and it's like the right combination. Coach Mike knows what he's doing with those guys, but I would contend that if Keenan Allen and Terry McLaurin were there, they wouldn't be nearly as explosive for obvious reasons, the speed.
Yeah, I think the 49ers miss him in the run game.
They do. Run
I
game is
think
where
they
I'd
miss
say.
his run game coordination, his kind of ingenuity. He has the same type of mind as Kyle.
Yep.
They're galaxy brain thinkers. Whereas I think, Forrester is totally old school, total old school mindset, total old school, old ball coach, great ball coach, but just old school. Whereas both Kyle and Mike are just this new school, totally intuitive, high end, constantly evolving offense. It's just they have no problem scrapping something and trying something new, and then
Hmm.
just keep different iterations of it. They just keep changing. versus kind of like where I would say an old school mentality is we know what works for us and we're going to run it until you stop us.
Mhm.
And then that's where kind of like the innovation might come from. But otherwise, I think they miss him. I think he's a great coach.
Anybody would miss Coach Mike, man. He's really good.
I mean, again, a lot of people were hating on him early on as a OC, which I thought was insane, but you could see the impact that he had to this team. It was huge. And that's why I got a head coaching job, and he's going to be a head coach in this league for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what ultimately happens with that. But the 49ers look good out of the bye. Any other takes that you want to talk about? Any comments? Anything? I mean, we're almost on 2 hours that we didn't address so far.
No, I mean, it's good to have one of these 2-hour streams again. And it's so much easier to talk about this team after a win. But yeah, I mean, this is exactly what this fan base needed. It can calm you down for a little while. I think the bye week, while it was good for the team to not only get away and adjust, was pretty harsh on fans because you have this idle time where nothing's happening. So, what did you say, Brad?
Arguing.
Right, like what did you say, Brad? I left and I come back and we're trading Brandon Ayuk and and it's just like idle time is the worst thing for football fans. So it's good to have this win.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily what my takeaway is this doesn't mean the 49ers are destined to start just blowing people out again, right? And again, the answer is somewhere in the middle right there. This is the NFL. Right. You're not going to have games that are typical like this, but this is the result that can happen when this team plays cohesive football the way that they did. It is one of the results, but I wouldn't expect this going forward. All you need to know is that largely the reinforcements got back. Trent got through with no setback, with no sort of setback. So hopefully he continues to grow. You got the defense looking a little bit better. Now Chase Young is here. You have to start thinking positively and moving in the right direction and stacking wins. You get this win against a playoff team from last year, and now Baker Mayfield's in front of you. Now Tampa's no cakewalk. Like, I just want to make sure that we get that out there because we've had the cakewalk discussion, right? About, don't start hyping up teams. I'm not hyping them up, but I have definitely learned my lesson about, it's just Tampa, right? Like anything can happen, but this is a perfect get right spot for them as they get ready for Philly and Seattle and Baltimore. Those are like huge games.
They're not the same team that they were last year either.
No, they weren't.
Like,
no, they're not.
With
they are not.
Tom Brady.
With Tom Brady. And that's insane. That's insane.
They have a youthful energy to them.
Yeah. Yep.
And that might 100%. Be because of Baker.
100%. And Baker's played solid football. Like, he's played solid football. I think he's established himself again as a guy that you can use to start while you're bridging to your next quarterback. I think that's absolutely fair. Mike Evans presents your problems. Godwin presents your problems. Rashad White has been playing very well. Cade Otton is somebody.
Rashad White.
Nice job. Yeah, right before the trade deadline, too. Cade Otton is somebody that nobody really talks about, too. So Tampa's got some things going for them. And I think one thing that we're kind of forgetting about this Tampa team that we saw last year, Vita Vea is going to play in this game. And that is a hell of a test for this interior offensive line, if we want to get back to that, because he was 100%. Not there last year. Vita Vea is a baller.
Justin's boy, Kalijah Cansey's balling out, too.
Yeah, there you go.
On the field line. So
there you go.
They present challenges. They definitely do. They're going to be a hard team to stop. And like Rashad White, that was my guy coming out of the draft the other while back. I wanted the 49ers to draft him. I think he went like 2 picks before they took TDP. That was the guy I was like, please get Rashad White. But he can do it.
Who?
Both.
Wait, who did the 49ers draft? Y'all seen him?
Don't.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry.
You said who?
Who?
There's 2 of those owls floating around that we haven't seen from a while. But that's beside the point. Rashad White, quality running back.
Absolutely.
I'm in a weird spot because I want him to do well for my dynasty
fantasy team.
But I'm like, just give him 1 touchdown, give him about 75 yards, about 5 receptions.
Hey, look, he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to have a big day fantasy for you to have a good day from him. What I mean is,
I just need a touchdown.
So he could have. All right, look, let's
receptions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Let's bear out his stats right now. Let's do 10 rushes for 34 yards and a rushing touchdown, 5 catches for 25 yards. That's 5, 7, 13. 16 points. 16 points from Rachaad White, and largely he was bottled up. I'd take that all day.
All day.
Uh-huh.
That's a perfect day in the office for me.
The good stat line.
DJ said, Brad, did you get the logo in your email? I have to double check. I might have, but it might have gone into the massive wasteland that is my email. I think I have. I don't even want to tell you how many unopened emails I have. It's worse than
and unopened text messages and missed
It's worse than my
FaceTimes and
text
missed
message.
calls.
It's worse than my DMs. I apologize. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to alert Brad to the idea that there's a possibility that I will be on the West Coast this weekend, and yet it's just crickets, man. Like look, man, I have curved women. I have curved family members. I've never been curved like I've been curved by Brad Gray.
The amount of times Jason's been like, dude, you big time me so much. I'm like,
dude, and then he'll text me the next day, like, we up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, now we up? What?
Oh, yeah, I apologize. It's a brutal habit that it's hard to shake, apparently. But the key word there was Aponte and Cali.
Maybe there's Sunday as well too. So it should be fun if we make it happen.
Danny says, "Are you guys buying the pumpkin loaf bread?"
Isn't that a George Kittle thing, right? Like, isn't that what that's about? All right, so explain it to me.
So
it's not the matching tattoo thing, right? Like with CJ Beathard. That's
no,
insane,
so,
by the way.
I think it was before the Seattle game where he went in 2021, where he went for like $180, 2 touchdowns. I think it was.
That's the game that I lost my mind, right? They lost that game.
Yeah. His dad got him pumpkin loaf before the game, and so after the first touchdown he scores, Kyle Juszczyk runs up to him and screams "pumpkin loaf" in his face, and then later Jimmy Garoppolo's like, "Bro, what did you eat?" And he's like, "Pumpkin loaf." And so it became like an inside joke. And then they had pumpkin loaf again, I think against the Bengals, and he went crazy against the Bengals.
He was going stupid in that game.
Yeah, and then Fred Warner said he had pumpkin loaf before the game. He had one of his best games ever. So it just became a thing. It's, it's one of those things.
The question I asked, Brad, is do we just feed the entire team this, or is this something for like special occasions? Because you can't just, it'll lose its mojo if you try to wear it out.
I think it's one of those things where it kind of loses its mojo. It's probably I don't think he does it every game. I think he kind of did it for a little while, but it's like, what if you have the pumpkin loaf?
You go 3 for 19.
Zero burger, like,
or you throw it. You go 3 for 19. Like it just loses its zest, right?
Yeah, kind of loses its zest a little bit. Okay. Gammon says next 49ers game, both of you will be attending.
Sunday.
Glass breaks.
God, that's Brad Graham's music.
God, it's Jason Aponte.
That's spicy man. Ah! Let me know if there's tailgates out there. Let's go. I'm trying to have some fun.
Oh God, what a good show! 2 hours. Yeah, I guess things fly when you're winning
and having fun, right? Like, and we're not breaking down backbreaking.
Yeah, we're not like trying to walk people off the ledge, yelling at us because they say Brock Purdy's terrible and like you're an idiot if you think Brock Purdy's any good. Dude, last week I had so many people dropping in my chat like, "What, you think Brock Purdy's a good quarterback? Like you don't know." I'm like,
all right,
okay, pal.
Well, right, pal. It's funny, right? Because we try to come on here, we try to be level-headed. I know everybody likes emotion and everything, right? So like I'll come on here and say, "Hey, listen, I think this is correctable, penalties, all those things, it's correctable." But once I close this, I just go and I sit in the corner and I'm like, "Oh my God, man, this is terrible." I start sweating. I'm just like, "It's over, man. It's done." It's like I'm on here trying to be level-headed, but I still have those same kind of emotions sometimes when I think about other things, right? Like I'm only human, but overarching things, right? Like the overarching things, it's like, okay, what can you control? What can you control? The penalties, the execution, the fumbling the football, all those things you can control. If this team was just getting blown off the ball, like, and they can't do anything right at all, I would have felt much different. But I always felt that the 49ers never forgot how to play football. They never forgot how to play football. That's something that's not possible. It's just not. They're too well coached. They're too talented. It just doesn't happen. Now, The fashion in which this team lost those 3 games is where the actual, I guess, the panic sets in. But
Yeah.
when you look at it and you're able to say, okay, well, if we just stop killing ourselves with this and stop killing ourselves with this, all you have to do is basically execute. And I know that's a simplistic view of it, but that's realistically all the 49ers have to do. If they execute and they don't kill themselves, they have as good a chance to beat anybody in this league at any time. And they're one of the harder teams to beat when they don't hurt themselves.
Yep. Let's see. I had a thought and it instantly went away.
Christmas
happens
cost
when
of
you're older.
tickets. Christmas
have no
game.
idea.
Oh dear.
No idea.
I have no idea. I would bet on not cheap. That's my final answer. Not cheap.
Yeah, I would agree. Not cheap.
Yeah, not cheap. On Christmas, not cheap. No.
Lower bowl outside of, the VIP area or club area.
400.
Easy. Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah.
400. Yeah. What did we spend when we went to the home opener that year when Rodgers took them down? And we were in the middle.
We were second deck too.
Right.
200.
Yeah. 200, right?
200.
So think about that for the home opener, right? That probably was double or quadruple in the lower bowl. And then you think about that game is going to have a lot of implications for the 49ers because they have to continue to win. And it's Lamar Jackson.
It's like a pre-playoff game.
And it's Lamar Jackson. And, oh, God, man, that game has me in a blender right now. I don't even want to think about it because the Ravens.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been nervous about that one too.
Yeah, the Ravens' record against the NFC, it's just if you only play them once and you're in the NFC, they barely lose. The only time that the Ravens really lose is against the AFC. Now, I'm not saying that an NFC team has never beaten them, but their record is overwhelmingly positive against teams that they faced once from the NFC. Look what they just did to Detroit.
Yeah. They run the ball really well.
They do, man.
And that's kind of where
Keaton
the
Mitchell
49ers struggled a little bit.
Oh, God, I don't want to think about that. All things are good with the Jags. We're good with that. I don't want to talk about that.
Before we get out of here, underdog?
Oh, yeah. Do you want to look up the best ball stats? Which I'm dead in the water. I have no quarterbacks. They're all either
as long as I'm
ACL
on
or
last
bench.
place, I'm winning.
Is that the standard?
That's my standard in this league.
All right, yeah, we should definitely get to it. I would have had a good week if I had a quarterback who could play. Daniel Jones is done. Ryan Tannehill's
I don't know.
done.
I might have a little comeback in me because I think I got CJ Stroud, and he's entering the MVP category.
I'm third still, and I'm 13 points away. I'm 12 points away from first place. So JCE 3781. He has Deshaun Watson done for the year, Tua Tagovailoa, Travis Etienne, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Jerome Ford, my God, Jamar Chase, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, who had a very good game, and Jawan Johnson and Jake Ferguson. So he's in first place with 1,222 points, $64 he's currently winning. Last week's first place is now dropped to second. That's Matthew. 207 from Josh Allen. He has Brock Purdy and Kyler Murray, which is actually very good and is setting him up for a great stretch because one of those guys is going to help carry him. Breece Hall's a dog. James Cook is falling out of favor, but Raheem Mostert, who's kind of fallen off a little bit. James Conner's back. Amon-Ra St. Brown is one of the best receivers in football. Put some respect on that man's name. Tank Dell has been hooping as well. And Higbee and Dulcich. I'm trying to figure out how the hell I'm back in this because I have no quarterbacks. I have Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, and Ryan Tannehill. I have no idea how I'm in this, but Ramondre Stevenson, Alexander Madison's hurt now. I guess Achan's coming back, so thank God. And then Gus, who's been scoring touchdowns. Oh, it's CeeDee Lamb and Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is on an absolute tear. And so is CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb, I think the last 5 weeks has ever since the Niners game, has just been absolutely dogging everyone.
They're throwing him the ball.
Yeah, they are. And Rondale Moore, and I got Evan Ingram and Dalton Schultz. So, hey, look, and with no quarterback, I'm 9 points away because I suck at math. I'm 9 points away.
And Keenan are carrying you right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Thank God. And they don't have any more buys. So, Brad is not in last. Okay? CJ Stroud is who?
What am I in?
You're in 11th.
Out of 12.
But you have a comfortable lead. I will say that. It would take an all-time collapse. But Justin Fields is back. CJ Stroud is hooping. The same thing with Eckler. Antonio Gibson's kind of helping you a little bit as well. Derrick Henry is who he is. Debo scores. Drake London was injured. Michael Pittman's still there. And then you've got Njoku and Luke Musgrave. You do have a fair lead from going into 12th. So if that's what you're shooting for, you're moving in the right direction.
How far away from 10th?
You are 8 points away from 10th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I can climb a little bit.
You're 10 away from 9, and you are 60 away from 8.
Oof. All right. Well, I could close a 60 gap.
There you go, Joe.
It would take.
There you go, Joe. $64. I mean, who doesn't want extra money? And by the way, guys, use promo code Aponte wherever you want with Underdog Fantasy to double your first deposit up to $100. There are higher, lower wagers that you guys can put on there. You can do best ball drafts. You can do daily drafts on there as well too. Also, don't forget, guys, for the people who celebrate, NBA season's here, so make sure you're using that so you can use your higher, lower on player props and things like that. Just use promo code APONTE to double your first deposit up to $100. Shout out to Underdog Fantasy.
And that, I think, is a perfect opportunity for us to shut it down right at 2 hours, almost exactly. So phenomenal show, Jason. As always better after a win, admittedly, but we still get through it regardless. Might see you this weekend. Might see the Jason Aponte in California.
Might be what's the nickname for Levi's? Like Candlesticks the Stick, like are we calling it like the Jean Pocket or something like that? Like, has anybody come up with anything?
No, I actually don't think there is a nickname.
And the game's at 1 o'clock Pacific time, right? So that means the sun is gonna be wild beaming into that stadium, like really.
Yeah,
like,
but it'll be cool. It'll probably be like mid 70s.
Okay, that's not so bad.
All right.
I just gotta make sure I wear sunscreen. Otherwise, the next state of the franchise, I'll be as red as this man's beard.
We don't want that. We don't want to see Jason as red as those towels behind him. He'll start blending in. So we'll see you guys next week, next Wednesday. 49ers got the Bucks coming up, and then we go on the Bird Gauntlet. Seattle, Eagles, Seahawks again, Cardinals, Ravens, the Bird Gauntlet.
Wow.
So dude, I don't know how this season, I don't know how we're heading into week 11. To me, it's crazy. But here we are. We're in week 11.
We wait so long and it goes so fast.
Right. And it just goes by faster. It feels like every season.
You know why it goes by faster? Because we always complain about the Thursday night football game. Like, everybody is starved in the offseason where they're like, I'll take any game. And then they're like, just for that player, it's Carolina and Chicago. Like that. And we're just like, oh my God. Every time you complain about a mid Thursday night football game or primetime game, the season just moves faster because they're just like, oh, you're ungrateful now.
Yeah, but we're 2 games away from Philly, the game we've had circled for a long time. It's going to be here before we know it. And then we are going to be squarely focused on the playoffs. So we're
big Kansas City Chiefs fans this week.
Yeah.
We are big Chiefs fans this week. We need that W.
That mean we have to be Taylor Swift fans as well?
I didn't say that. I did not say that. Inherently, well, I want this. I want this, Taylor Swift, if you're watching. Please go to the game because Travis Kelce forgets how to play football when you're not there. I need you there. So we need a vintage Kelce, 8-catch, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns. Let's go, Chiefs. Let's go, Chiefs. Let's go, Big Red. Somebody get Andy Reid all the cheeseburgers.
Karma is a guy who plays on the Chiefs, apparently.
Oh, all right. End the show. End it. End it.
I didn't have a Taylor Swift joke on the docket. That one just came naturally. I didn't even know I had it in me. And that means it's a perfect time to shut it down. So appreciate everyone as always. Again, make sure you go to both channels, sub to both, like the videos on both channels. And we'll see you guys again next week for State of the Franchise. Hopefully talking about another dub. So we'll see you guys on the other side. Peace. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now.